and welcome to Beerfield Fantasy Football. I am your host at Hot BFF with two P's, as always, joined by the power of the internet by Thurry BFF with two F's. Dan, despite your beer troubles, how you doing?
It's good. It's been a long weekend. Happy Father's Day to all of our listeners that are fathers, and hopefully your kids are not listening to this adult friendly show. Otherwise, despite Rolling Meadows' best efforts to give me shitty beer, I'm good.
Yeah, we kind of successfully avoided the crappy beer there, so that's a definite good thing. So, hey, we got a good show for you today, or at least I hope they're all good, but this one should be better than normal. We're previewing the NFC South, which figures to be high-flying and full of fantasy relevance. It may be the best division in football from what I can tell. So
it should be, at least for fantasy-wise, it should be.
Fantasy-wise, it should be, yes. I think the NFC North is going to be up there as far as competitiveness goes, but
definitely.
There's going to be a lot more defense in that division than this one. Before we get into that, some housekeeping items. You can follow the show, as always, Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped at BeerfieldFF. We sometimes post beer reviews there. I'm not necessarily great about doing that regularly. Facebook and YouTube, Beerfield Fantasy Football. On YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification icon so you can come interact with us and hang out. We also do have merch available and Patreon. So, yeah, email us for that information. I don't believe either of us have a shirt or a hat on today, but it exists. You can go find it.
I'm rocking one of the old school shirts, actually.
I did that yesterday. So, I guess we're rocking old school merch that is no longer available. Hey, so we got some other fun stuff to talk about too. First off, Wrestling for a Cure partnership is entering its second week. So basically, what that is Wrestling for a Cure is a organization out of Springfield, Illinois, that puts on wrestling shows and handles different stunts and challenges and things like that to raise money for St. Jude's. If we can raise $500 as a show, which is about $1 from every one of you that listens to an episode, we can, I'll get put through a table. So if you've ever wanted to see me go through a table on YouTube, or you just don't like kids having cancer, be sure to pop in and donate to that. You can find the link on Twitter and in the YouTube info section thingy, or you can go to www.gofundme.com/hopper-goes-through-a-table-for-St-Jude. Real easy to remember URL. Or just go there and search for Hopper Goes Through a Table for St. Jude. Pretty decent start to that, so we'll be hyping the crap out of that up until their show to try to get me put through a table. Other fun stuff going on. If you've ever wanted to go to Canton, Ohio, if you want to go see the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or just want to come visit us or live there, we're going to be at the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo. It's something Bob Long of Big Guy Fantasy Sports is organizing and putting together. It's coming together real nice. You can come catch us and a bunch of other podcasts there, hang out. We'll answer all your questions. We'll have some fun stuff yet to be determined at our booth. To get tickets to that, you can go to MidwestFFExpo.com, promo code BEER, and I believe it's the weekend after the Hall of Fame game, but hey, come hang out.
I believe it's the third weekend in August. I think it's the
18th.
The 18th.
Yeah, I think
something like that.
Hold on, I have a calendar. I'm on a computer.
August 18th. I just got onto the website here.
August 18th. It is the third Sunday in August. So, yep, you can come hang out with us there, though. MidwestFFExpo.com, promo code BEER. Should get you $5 off your tickets. They're pretty cheap as is, about $20. So, if you ever wanted to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that's a pretty good time to do it.
Definitely.
All right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of the show now that we're done singing the praises of people that we support or support us, and let's find out what's fueling us today as I catch the hiccups.
What's fueling Beerfield?
All right, Dan, your second attempt should be more fruitful or less fruity than your first attempt. So what are you actually drinking after Rolling Meadows failed you?
Sweetwater's is Hop Hash. It's their easy IPA. It's their flagship beer. Basically hash, the pure residence, concentrated hop goodness that all brewers crave. Scrap from the walls of hot palletizers, hash delivers the big hit of flavor that'll keep you drinking and drinking and drinking at just 4.2%. It's a very easy stepper.
All right, and as for me, I am drinking Sakura Haze from Sudwork Brewing out of Davis, California. This is the first time I've had anything from Sudwork. First time I get to try this brewery, so kind of exciting. Not often we get a new brewery on here that we haven't had before, so especially not one that's not local to St. Louis where I'm at. So we will let you know what we think about these particular beers or my first impressions of Sudwork in general. It is a hoppy, hazy lager. It checks in at 6% alcohol by volume, so not too heavy. So we will go ahead and give you a review on those as we get about halfway through our division preview. Let's go ahead and hit the news.
News.
All right, on to the news. Starting off with, I guess you could consider this the legal section.
I guess.
This is just bizarre and bad, but partly funny, but not for the first part. I don't really know. Kellen Winslow Jr. was convicted of felony rape of a 58-year-old homeless woman and faces life in prison for that charge. He's also facing charges for raping a teenage girl and an unconscious hitchhiker. So the weird part about that is obviously an unconscious hitchhiker and a homeless person, and there's nothing amusing about that part. That's fucking terrible, regardless of who it is or who the victim is. I mean, that's just god-awful, and he deserves life in prison and then some for that. But the problems don't stop there. It's also been reported this week that Winslow would often be caught watching porn during team meetings, spontaneously masturbating in the locker room and in front of teammates. It got so bad to the point of where teammates would request not to be roomed with him because he would just openly masturbate around them. So this guy's, he's got some problems that I don't think anybody realized were there.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad that it reached this point. And I know that this is an actual condition that people actually have these issues, not obviously raping people because fucking terrible, but spontaneously masturbating is not a first time thing for people. So I hope he can get the help for that part if he doesn't get killed in prison for raping and doing all those sorts of horrendous things. So
right. At 36, so he'd been out of the league for a while. Wasn't too late for a comeback, but it is now. So
it's
he's had problems, and this is definitely a mental condition. On to things that are not as horrendous, but still not great. Alvin Smith, who's currently indefinitely suspended by the league, came down with his 4th DUI this week, so he's arrested for that. So if you're in an IDP points per DUI league, Alvin Smith is probably your number 1 draft pick.
You're 101, folks.
You're 101. In more fun stuff, the Raiders will be the featured team on this season of Hard Knocks, and I've probably never looked forward to a season of Hard Knocks less than this.
No, there's one thing I'm looking forward to. It's that Antonio Brown and Von Sass-Perfect are now teammates, and I want to see their first interaction. Other than that, don't give a fuck.
Yep, I'll watch it because I always watch it, but the Raiders were not the team I was hoping for, so...
Yeah, no, I agree.
We'll see how good that is. Broncos owner Pat Bowlen passed away at the age of 75 after a battle with Alzheimer's. He was one of the more influential owners in the league, so he'd been fighting that for about the last 5 years and given up control of the team. So, sad day in Denver.
Yes.
Chris Herndon is facing a likely 2-game suspension following a DWI last June. He pled guilty to that in January. Nothing has officially been handed down by the league, though, so be wary of that. And Rico Gathers has been suspended 1 game for violating the league's substance abuse policy.
Oh, we all so much want Rico Gathers to be a thing.
Marijuana possession.
And it never will.
He's probably done in Dallas.
Yeah, probably.
All right, moving on to roster news. The Vikings, obscurely, after drafting Irv Smith, gave Kyle Rudolph a 4-year, $36 million contract extension.
I actually like this move. This is a win-now move, and this is an offense that is lacking of a wide receiver 3, and now with coordinators and advisors that want to run more multi-tight end sets. So this is a good thing for the Vikings. It takes a little bit for tight ends to learn the system and be not just fantasy relevant, for just NFL relevant in year one. So not shocked by this move, and actually a bit happy by it. I think their out is in a year or two. It's a very fun forward deal. So
All right.
not the worst thing.
No, not the worst thing. And yeah, that T rat is kind of a good thing. Rudolph's production's fallen off the last couple of years, so we'll see how that works out. But Irv definitely should put the cold water on Irv Smith dynasty talk for a little bit.
That's fine. I will buy all the Irv Smiths if I need to then.
Yeah. The Jets released tight end Neil Sterling, cutting their crop of mediocre tight ends behind Chris Herndon. He was later signed by the Chiefs to be a training camp body, I'm assuming.
Yay.
The Patriots acquired tight end Mike. Oh, actually, hold on. Let me preface this. It's the wild adventures of Michael Roberts. He was acquired by the Patriots from the Lions in exchange for a 2020 7th rounder. That deal later fell through because he failed the physical, and then he was released by the Lions. So, not on a team.
I can't wait for them or for the Patriots to sign him for free now.
Right. The Chiefs signed kicker Harrison Butker to a 5-year deal.
Hashtag kickers matter.
Kickers do matter. He's made 90% of his field goals, including 6 of 9 from 50. He is one of the better kickers in the league.
God damn,
on one of the better offenses in the league. Saints side wide receiver Rashard Matthews. This is an intriguing signing for later in the year because they do not have a steadfast, really second or third wide receiver. I mean, Ted Ginn, I guess, but the third wide receiver spot's pretty open. Traquan Smith didn't really flash a whole lot last year, even though he's who everybody wants to have it. Cam Meredith still isn't practicing. So, yeah, this is another body and a good one.
It is intriguing because he was good in Tennessee, and then he got pissed off and then flamed out, got hurt, and got cut. I think he was hurt all of last year or just not on a team last year because he wasn't with Tennessee for long. So this is definitely intriguing. Unfortunately, we've already projected everything out for the Saints at this point, but this will be an interesting camp battle to see how that 3 and 4, shape out. There's a lot of bodies in New Orleans right now.
Yeah, it is.
Receiving core wise.
It is, and I really don't expect the third wide receiver in New Orleans to be worth all that much the way that I projected it, just because of the way that team's trended the last 2 years. But Rashard Matthews was a back-to-back 800-yard receiver, a wide receiver 2 type of guy in Tennessee before forcing his way out last year after injuries plagued him, and then going on IR with a hamstring injury after a couple of games with the Jets where he never really caught on.
That's right, the Jets.
Mm-hmm. All right. Where was I? Sorry, I'm trying to do technical support.
The Packers release Capri Ribs.
Okay, that's it. Trying to do technical support and run a podcast at the same time.
I can do both. I can help you.
Packers release Capri Bibs, and no one cares.
Yep.
All right, injury news. I'm going to run through this real quick because there's a lot of it because it is mini camp time, so you're getting updates on everybody that's hurt. Stop me if you've heard this before. Evan Ingram sidelined with a hamstring injury. The Giants are, quote, just being smart with their number 1 tight end, so he's still being plagued by hamstring injuries entering year 3.
Not good.
Robert Foster is missing time with what is believed to be a minor foot injury. However, the Bills are also quoted as saying it's still, quote, early in the process, so it sounds like there could be more to that than they're leading on to.
Not good.
Stay tuned in that. On the good side of things, A.J. Green will participate in individual drills at minicamp. He's expected to be a full go after his toe injury last season.
Very good.
Cam Meredith is not participating in Saints minicamp. At this point, he's considered a cut candidate, although Meredith claims the absence is, quote, mostly a matter of being smart. I guess being smart if you want to...
He won't be a Saint for long.
Yeah, I guess being smart if you want to be passed up by everybody.
Yep.
Miles Sanders will not participate in minicamp with the same hamstring injury that kept him out of OTAs, so that seems to be lingering for a bit.
That's not good.
No, it's not good, given he's a rookie running back trying to take over the number 1 spot from Jordan Howard, so probably going to have to fade him a little bit.
Yep.
Especially since, rookies missing valuable offseason time is bad news bears. Andrew Luck's going to miss minicamp with a calf injury. He's expected to be a full go for training camp still, but this is the same issue that kept him out of OTAs.
Yeah.
Not concerned yet.
Not yet.
Jimmy Garoppolo is still on track for training camp following his ACL tear last season. He's been limited to individual drills so far. This kind of matters because he hasn't had a chance to really build rapport with anybody, or at least not anybody new and not in real game action. So
Yeah, I mean, he's been banged up so much with his time in San Francisco. So who knows? At this point, they may want to move on if he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it is just the one knee issue that's kept him out, but at the same time, for if you don't have in-game reps, and I mean, yeah, Dante Pettis, Marquise Goodwin, George Kittle, I guess he had time with all of them, but you've got a new crop of rookie wide receivers, and I mean, just reps with your people is important.
And they want to make the playoffs, and you have two drafts coming up here in 2020 and 2021 that should bowl some interesting quarterback prospects too.
Yep, more on that here in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Delaney Walker and Johnny Smith are both sitting out Titans minicamp as they continue to race to see who can be healthy first. Both players are expected to be ready by training camp, however, even though they're not currently ready.
Yeah.
On the flip side, going to the Colts tight ends, Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle are both running routes at full speed. They should be ready to go by training camp. No concerns there.
Love it.
Marquise Brown has been cleared for individual drills following his Liz Frank injury.
Yeah.
The mystery of where in the world is Sony Michel has finally been answered. Jeff Howe of The Athletic reports Michel had an offseason knee scope. He's expected to be ready for camp, but that explains why he hasn't been at practice.
Makes sense.
49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel is sitting out a minicamp with a hip injury. He's expected ready by training camp, but again, another rookie missing time in the offseason is not good.
Nope, not yet.
Trey Burton is expected to be ready for the start of camp following hernia surgery. Marquise Lee is expected to be ready for the start of camp following last season's knee injury, although mixed reports on that, and Anthony Miller should be ready for training camp following shoulder surgery. That's all I got in the way of injury news. Take away from that what you will. We had one retirement. Former offensive guard of the Falcons, Zane Beadles, also of the Broncos, has retired.
He shall be missed.
I guess. I mean, he was pretty good. All right. LOL news of the week. Finally. This is the part I like.
Laugh out loud news of the week.
All right. Starting off with the Giants, Coach Pat Shurmur did not rule out Daniel Jones starting week 1.
God, why?
This is
after. I mean,
they're
doing it. Maybe it's got a long con going here. Maybe he wants to play him out so they can suck again and they can get out of this shithole that they put themselves in. Let's just hope that's the case.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, does it matter? Really, it doesn't matter. It's a downgrade from Eli Manning, but either way, it doesn't affect anything. I don't know why they're kicking this out there. It's more disrespect to Eli Manning and the media, especially after Gettleman came out and said, yeah, we think he's still got plenty left in the tank.
He could be your quarterback in 2021.
Right. Yep. Nope. Let's start Daniel Jones. He's going to be ready.
Yeah.
The Vikings are, quote, challenging Kirk Cousins to practice against looks defenses showed him last year. Is this not a normal thing? Like,
you would expect this to be a thing?
Why is this news?
I don't understand, like, sigh.
Yeah, I think your head just exploded there a little bit. I don't get it either. You'd figure that you'd want to, practice most of the time against looks that other teams are going to show you so you can get used to those. So I don't know why that's a challenge or something abnormal. I guess, I don't know. I've never been a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
The Browns transition to new offensive coordinator Todd Monken has, quote, not gone smoothly, per Mike Silver. This has resulted in Freddie Kitchens taking a more active role in play calling and in the offense, and follows an in-season demotion of Monken last season in Tampa Bay. So, trouble in paradise?
I guess. I mean, Freddie Kitchens did a pretty decent job last year with that offense when he took over, so...
Just kind of makes you wonder if this is another Todd Haley situation, though.
I mean...
Offensive head coach, offensive coordinator that has had decent success in the past. I mean, Monken was not bad in Tampa Bay. Despite getting demoted, they were putting up a ton of yards. The offense wasn't the problem in Tampa.
No, I mean, I guess we'll have to see what more comes out of this. But Cleveland got a lot of new people, a lot of new coaching staff, a lot of new players, and I think people just expect them to be the best team in that division. And you're starting to see the effects of when everything is super new or when the entire coaching staff and a lot of these top players on their offense and defense are newer players, how we should temper our expectations on that.
Well, I still expect them to be the best team in that division.
I do too, and I'll have them projected that way.
Yeah. Ex-Bengals coach Marvin Lewis, quote, doesn't think he will return to coaching in the NFL, and he's saying this as if he's the one making that decision.
Yeah.
Is there a demand?
That's true.
Is there a demand anywhere for Marvin Lewis?
I mean, if Hugh Jackson gets a job somewhere,
yeah,
that just scares me to think that could actually happen.
It
again.
does. Yeah, stay as assistant to Herm Edwards in Arizona or whatever it is you're doing.
Yes, please.
All right, division preview.
Oh, hold on.
What?
You forgot about John Ross news.
Oh, I did forget that.
We can't forget about shitting on our favorite player to shit on. From the
Nope, I'm excited about this one too. I skipped right over this. John Ross has, quote, struggled with consistency during spring practices, which that's not really news. He struggled with consistency in the NFL, period.
Yep.
This comes after Tyler Boyd publicly stated Ross was, quote, struggling to grasp the playbook. Ladies and gentlemen, your wide receiver 3 for the Cincinnati Bengals. I cannot talk today.
Oh,
whatever.
Welcome to my world.
The point is Alex Erickson. That's the point. That's what I was trying to get to.
Or Stanley Morgan Jr.
Stanley Morgan Jr. That's right.
That's what we're hoping for.
That's what we're hoping for. Not looking promising for John Ross. Remember when we told everybody he was going to be a bust?
Yeah, this is why. Hopefully, you guys listened.
Hopefully, you listened. That's one thing we were right about in year one. Okay, yeah. Now division previews.
Now we're good.
Oh, hey, real quick, I forgot to promo something in the intro. So
okay,
let's rewind to the intro real quick. Hey, I did a guest. I did a guest spot with Loaded Box Podcast.
There you go.
Where we talked about second-year players, and Ben made an announcement that he's pregnant. Well, he's not pregnant; his wife is. And my calculator made an appearance, so be sure to check that out. It was a real good conversation around second-year quarterbacks and wide receivers.
We definitely love doing guest spots and shows with Loaded Box, and we will definitely be having those guys on sooner than later.
Always fun with them. All right, now we can go to division previews. This is the third time I've said we're going there. I promise we're really going there now.
We're almost there.
Division preview.
All right, let's go ahead and preview the NFC South. We do expect this to be probably the best offensive division in football, which means there's a ton to talk about and going to be a ton of fantasy relevance. Let's jump right in. As always, we'll go in ABC order. We'll give you some must-owns that we won't talk a lot about. Those are guys we fully expect without much of a doubt to be a top 24 player and have been a top 24 player in the past. So there are guys we'll talk about that we expect to be top 24, but maybe it's their first time making an appearance. We expect them to take a jump this year. If it's somebody that's consistently there year in and year out, we're not going to talk a whole lot about them. And then we'll jump into questions and really the biggest question facing each team in that division. So let's go ahead and start with the Tampa Bay Bucks. I got one must-own for them. That's been a must-own year in and year out. That's Mike Evans. That should come as no surprise to anybody. I don't expect a huge drop-off for Mike Evans this year. Not enough has changed for his productivity to really change. Expect another wide receiver 1 season for him. I'm assuming
it's actually boots to him, just given this offense should take the next step if they really take any more steps.
Nope, I agree with that completely. So I'll aboard the Mike Evans, I guess, hype train, even though it's not really a hype train because,
right.
Again, we expect it from him. So that being said, let's go ahead and move past him. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Ryan Fitzpatrick's gone. The Fitzmagic has left town. Bruce Arians is there, which we do expect to be a net boost for the offense. How are we projecting Jameis Winston this season? He was somebody we projected high last season, and then Fitzpatrick got starts, and Winston was good when he played. Really good when he played, but they monkeyed around with Ryan Fitzpatrick for a bit. So full season Jameis Winston with a good offensive coordinator. How are you expecting him to do?
As always, you should see some career high numbers here. His career high right now in attempts is 567. I think that was his second year. I have him at 580, so slightly above that. as the offense should take the next step. The defense is still, I believe, a work in progress. They'll be better, but I don't think they're quite there, especially within this division where the three other teams actually have good enough offenses to make defenses sweat here. But I got him going 4,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, 16 picks, because that seems to be what he does. A lot of touchdowns, a lot of picks. You're going to get the same what you saw with Carson Palmer and Bruce Arians' years with Arizona. Just a couple rushing touchdowns, still going to be a turnover machine, which is what Winston's always been. So he'll be a back-end QB1, high QB2. Streamer status, you and I, Hopper, have always been high on him since we started this podcast, and he's proven it to us when he's been healthy. You're going to go through your hard times with them, as we saw last year, but there's no Fitz magic or Fitz tragic to supplant him. There's just a bunch of nobodies behind him.
I think his backup's Blaine Gabbert.
Yes, 5 Point States.
So I know about it. I was a little higher on the projections just because of two things. One, the division that they play in, there's going to be a lot of shootouts, especially the fact that they don't have a good defense. We made the joke last week that to Carlton something and somebody else who I don't remember completely fixed their defense per Bruce Arians. It's not going to be the case. His defense is still going to be bad. They're going to have to throw a lot to keep up. They don't have a stout running game. Peyton Barber's efficiency has not been good. Ronald Jones still has a lot to prove. So it's going to be Jameis Winston and all of those pass-catching options trying to carry this team. I've got him projected at just a tick over 600 pass attempts at 604. Same. Everything else is pretty proportional, though. 4,600 yards, 33 touchdowns, 16 picks, 2 rush touchdowns. So, again, you're going to get the turnovers with him. Bruce Arians will be a net gain in completion percentage. He will be a net gain in touchdown percentage. He's done that everywhere he's been. And I expect this team to be in a lot of shootouts, to be able to run a lot of plays because of their defense, and the passing game to have to, really stay a passing game. So, Jameis Winston, to me, is a back-end quarterback one, but the beautiful thing about Jameis Winston is that nobody ever believes in Jameis Winston, so you can get him at the end of your draft.
There's a lot of haters. He's always a good buy, and he's always just hovering on that, on that buy now in Dynasty too, where people just want to sell him for cheap, especially in 2 quarterback leagues. Maybe not so much this year, as people have been hyped about this offense with Bruce Arians showing up, but again, we're big fans of him. So,
yep, I am a huge fan of Jameis Winston this year. Maybe a little too much, but
that's us every year, though.
Yeah, I'll have to fade him a bit based on where my points totals put him. So, just looking at that real quick. Yeah. So, moving on from Jameis Winston, who by all accounts we expect to set some career highs, have a good season. It's not going to be a huge jump in a lot of things other than the increased pass attempts for him, which is going to lead to those career highs and lead to that type of season. We're not projecting his interception rate to go down by a ton or his touchdown rate to go up by a ton. But he's got great weapons around them. So, before we get to those great weapons around him, let's talk about some of the not-so-great weapons around him. Everyone hates Peyton Barber or thinks he's going to lose the job. Ronald Jones is catching hype, but he caught hype last year and didn't really do much with it. How do we project this backfield? What are you looking at from Peyton Barber? What are you looking at from Ronald Jones?
It's gross. I think you're going to see split carries. The targets I have projected are going to mainly go to Andre Ellington, which is why I have him projected. But Jones, I expect the efficiency to really rise up. He struggled last year with it. His confidence was gone. The team really didn't believe in him. He got the hype now coming from that training camp that he's calm, relaxed. He's showing up. This offensive line should be better. And if you watch his tape from the 18 class, you'll realize that he's a lot better with space. It's a lot better when he has a good offensive line. That's why he's been so productive at USC. So I expect to see that tick there. I just don't think you're going to see the rushing attempts to get him there. I don't think they'll fully trust him right away. I think it'll be more Peyton Barber early on. Then you'll slowly see the transition as Jones will fit this offense more than what Barber does. Barber is a good backup. He can do both things, but neither of them are going to be fantasy relevant unless one of them gets hurt. You're looking at, probably Jones going to be drafted before Barber, so Barber might be the better value. But I don't see them anything more than just low-end flex options or in bye weeks.
Barber is going to be an obnoxious back end running back too. I think. I got him projected
That's
at
fair.
210 rush attempts, which breaks out to like 13 a game over the course of the season.
Oh, I'm far less than him than that.
3.9 yards a rush, so not great efficiency. Just over 800 yards, only 4 rushing touchdowns. So not a lot of good things outside of volume from Peyton Barber. I do expect Ronald Jones to come along. I didn't project Andre Ellington because I think he's more of a camp body. He's never been efficient, but he does know the offense. He may be there as more of a Ronald Jones type of mentor, I guess. I expect Ronald Jones to have a good camp. I do expect him to cut into work late. I had him seeing 109 carries with a little bit better efficiency than what Peyton Barber has. And I've got him seeing 68 targets, too, being the primary pass-catching back to Peyton Barber's 33. So, again, I'm not projecting Andre Ellington to do much. I am projecting Ronald Jones to start to flash and to pick up passing back duties as he kind of eases into this offense. I do think Arians will better utilize him and better put him in positions to succeed. But, that's even with those numbers for Ronald Jones, that does not make him more than probably a mid to late season waiver pickup when they do start to use him more. And Peyton Barber is like Peyton Barber is the perfect Nick Sparks running back. It's
at the $1 auction back.
$1 auction back. I didn't draft a running back in the first 6 to 7 rounds, and now I need running backs. That's what Peyton Barber is, because he's at least going to have some form of volume.
Yeah, we're massively different. I have Barber actually leading the team in rushing attempts because I think they're going to go pretty much chalk. This is an entirely new coaching
I have
staff.
Barber leading the team in rushing attempts.
Yeah, no, I don't. I have Jones.
Oh, you got Jones leading the team in rushing attempts?
I have Jones at 164, Barber at 151 because I think Jones will show enough, and he's a second-round pick. They got to see what they have in him. They can't just let him sit there unless he finds a way to struggle even more so.
You know what's funny about you saying that they got to see what he have in him? I just had this discussion with Ben and DJ over on Loaded Box too.
Oh, did you?
I did, and it's the misconception that a team has to see what they have in somebody.
That's
because
true.
The fantasy community says that a lot. But how often? I think it was Josh Rosen we were talking about. But how often does an NFL team actually say, "Well, he's not performing, but I got to see what I have in him, so we're going to stick him out there"?
I just think Jones is just a better running back than Barber.
I think so too.
And I think that's where he's going to be at. I think he's better for what the speed of this offense is going to be, which is also why I like Andre Ellington, because Jones isn't a pass catching back yet. Barber's mediocre and can do it when asked to, but Ellington was brought in to fill that role. He's had multiple 50-plus target seasons when there hasn't really been a clear-cut running back there, which is how
which still isn't fantasy relevant in half point.
Yeah, in which you'll find ways to be relevant. I don't have him. I have him just scoring 1 touchdown. I'm right with you on the touchdowns. I have him scoring 4 touchdowns apiece because I expect this offense to produce, especially down in the red zone with all the weapons there. It should be easy enough for them to just fall into to fall into the end zone. But to put a bow on it, I don't believe anybody, in this backfield, in this backfield to actually take over. So it's going to be just an annoyance throughout.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure neither of us are saying go out and draft either of these guys highly. If you want to take a flyer on them, that's fine. Ronald Jones, I think we can agree, has more upside. I personally expect Peyton Barber to get more of the work, but yeah. I do expect Ronald Jones to cut into that as the season goes on. And I think next season is when we're talking about Ronald Jones having a full-on breakout.
I've taken Barber in a lot of mocks because he goes so late. Jones gets drafted before him. You're just taking the better value.
Yep. All right. Moving along to the wide receivers. Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries are gone. That's freeing up about 170 targets. Justin Watson is expected to slide in. Chris Godwin expected to see an uptick. And Mike Evans obviously expected to still lead the team. How are we projecting the wide receivers outside of Mike Evans, or even Mike Evans to be impacted by the absence of those two?
It's just going to be more of the same of Mike Evans. It's the impact in Godwin. It's tough to see because they also brought in Rashad Perriman.
Not Rashad Perriman. He's been so successful.
He's right. He's more, of that field stretcher if they want to keep Godwin in the slot. I didn't project both him or I didn't project both Perriman or Watson out because I don't think the targets are going to really change much with them. I give a massive uptick to Godwin and Howard by massive, I mean by like 20 more a piece for Godwin. I got him at 116, 78 receptions, just shy of 950 yards and 6 touchdowns. He'll be productive in this offense. It just depends how that depth chart pans out. And if they move him to the slot area or they keep him out at the 2 and then move Justin Watson on the inside.
So here's the problem I had with projecting a massive target increase to OJ Howard. Bruce Arians tight ends since 2013, and he does have a long record of tight ends here, just 84 targets a season. So he has been much more apt to target the wide receivers. Their worst case scenario is that Justin Watson and Brashad Perriman split targets. I do have Chris Godwin going up to about 110. That's up from 92, so it's not a huge increase. It's about an 18 target increase, but I do have him going over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. Mike Evans, I have at 1,300 yards and 146 targets with 10 touchdowns. So Godwin, I still expect to have a lot of touchdown upside with a slight uptick in targets and yardage. I mean, that's less than 100 yards. It's less than an increase of 100 yards over the course of the season and 18 targets. So it's not a huge increase, but it is decent. Justin Watson's the one I really projected to jump up. 82 targets, but 48 receptions, 557 yards, 2 touchdowns. That does not make him a top 36 wide receiver. That puts him somewhere in the 40s. Is a bye-week fill-in type of guy. OJ Howard, Cameron Brate. Again, OJ Howard, because of his efficiency and his touchdowns, I think is going to be fantasy relevant. I think it's going to be frustrating just because of how Bruce Arians runs his offenses. And if OJ Howard does produce, he'll be one of the first does produce at a high level or get a ton of target volume, he's going to be one of the first to do it in a Bruce Arians-led team.
See, I think he has the talent to do so. And I don't think Arians has ever really had talented tight ends. I mean, he had Kobe Fleener and Dwayne Allen when he joined, or when he was still the head coach of the Colts. But that was way back in 12. And then with the Cardinals, they never really had anybody there. Howard is the third option, or at least the 2A to 2B to Godwin in this offense if he stays healthy, which has been his issue, is staying healthy. I did project him to play 16 games because I didn't want to fucking deal with that headache, and
I did not. That's the other thing. I projected him.
I want to see, like, for me, it just more optimistic upside for him because this is an offense that should produce fantasy relevant players, and Howard is such a good and athletic tight end and a guy that they can use in that slot area as a big move tight end who's also a good blocker. So I got him seeing 101 targets, 70 receptions, over 1,000 yards because he's been a downfield threat, 16.3.
So you got him being in the same area as Travis Kelce.
I expect him to be, well, he won't see the 140 plus targets I think Kelce will get, but he will be a top 5.
Is that above where you projected Ertz?
No, I got Ertz a little bit higher. I got Ertz, I think, with 120 something reception targets.
Okay, I will be shocked as hell if he hits those numbers. I don't know what I'll do, but Jesus, I will be shocked as shit if he hits those numbers.
It's for me, it's him being healthy and him filling that slot / inside role, and the fact that Arians hasn't had a tight end like Howard in his career, so I expect uptick from a lot.
Yeah, well, here's the other thing I have cutting into that too, Cameron. One, I do project Howard to miss 2 games.
That's fair.
2, I don't expect Cameron Brate to be completely not used because he's also a really good blocker. So that's going to hurt it as well.
I mean, you could see a lot of 2 tight end sets. I mean, this is a very good 1 and 2 receiver core. We don't know of the 3. We all love Johnson Watson. We love his upside, but we still need to see it too. Yeah. At least with Howard and Brate, they've shown it. I have Brate being relevant at times. He's got 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's been a thorn in Howard's side the last season. And then when Howard gets hurt, he's obviously going to be relevant again.
So you're projecting Ertz and Goddard roles, which I just don't see. I just don't see it because of Evans and Godwin. That's the difference between the Eagles and the Bucs, is that you don't have Nelson Aguilar and Alshon Jeffrey are not Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So
true.
That's where I struggle.
Yeah, and that's just where the offense. I just expect. I mean, we all see how good the Bucs offense can be and should be, and how mediocre that defense is, I think there's going to be a lot of passes to go around.
All right. Well, that covered the next question, which was tight ends. So anything else on the Bucs before we move on to the Falcons?
No, that's it.
All right, let us move on to the Atlanta Falcons. Dirk Cutter is making his return after being ousted from Tampa Bay as their offensive coordinator. Obviously, Julio Jones is a must-own here. Let's go ahead and start talking Matt Ryan first off, who had some solid years under Dirk Cutter. Do we see him as a viable week in and week out starter? Does it have enough younger guys surpass him to force him into streamer status?
I think so. I mean, this is one of, if not the easiest offense to project for me from the 4 divisions that we've done. I think everything's been just kind of fell through nicely and smoothly. I don't see him reaching that 600 plus attempt mark that he had during the Carter years, because I expect his defense to be better, a lot better than last year. They were banged up. That secondary was pretty much done for by week 4. So I do expect health to at least be on their side this year. Freeman healthy should help with that as well. So I do have Ryan being relatively competitive, more so as a back in QB1, high, QB2, one of those trusted starters and streamers guys, a guy that you can draft later on and feel confident in. I got him at 589 attempts, 31 touchdowns, 11 picks, just shy of 4,500 yards. As he should have another good Matt Ryan season outside of, a couple of years ago. That's what we've seen from him.
Yeah, so for Matt Ryan, I do have my hair over 608 pass attempts. Again, that just goes down to the division. Even though the Falcons' defense will be better, still don't expect them to be elite levels. And really with an Arians offense and Jameis Winston and Drew Brees and a really good Saints offense in the same division, I just expect there to be shootouts.
Yeah.
Forget who else they draw, but these guys do not have necessarily like an incredibly easy schedule either. So again, it's not up in the 650 range that he had with Cutter. It is just over 600 pass attempts, 30 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So, and that was kind of the issue with Matt Ryan at that point in time, right? He was putting up a ton of yardage, but wasn't throwing for a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah.
Just to take over 4,800 yards. So I am right there with you as far as rankings go, though. Points wise, this is without me taking into account injury or consistency or any of that. So not into my final rankings, but points wise, he's currently my 9th ranked quarterback with 3 divisions left to go. So to me, that's probably going to put him probably in the 13 to 15 range, which is about where I think is fair for him. He's a guy that could be a quarterback 1, most likely going to be finished outside of that, but in the high end streamer range.
I mean, he was a top 5 last year, and that was, in response with the defense that was banged up and a team that had to throw a bunch. But 2 years ago, they had a top 10 defense in that same, in the same division, and Ryan didn't need to throw it much. So
no,
that's why I'm coming down from that a little bit.
Yep, I kind of have him right in the middle of where he was those 2 seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
So moving on to the running backs, you got a returning Devonta Freeman after he missed most of the last season due to injury. Tevin Coleman's gone. Ito Smith should fill at least a portion of that role. How are you projecting the running backs?
So Freeman won't see 200 carries. I got him at 195, so just shy of under that. I think what we saw in the year 2 of Freeman and Coleman is kind of where I think we may see it with this. Smith will have an increase, but it won't be a massive jump. I got him at 120 rushes, or I think it is an increase. They're both going to be relatively efficient in this offense. I got Freeman just shy of 900 yards. Smith at 420.
Do you just have him not rushing a ton then? Or do you have a third back coming in and taking carries?
No, I got him at about 315.
315?
Kind of. That's just with running back rushing attempts. So I'm not taking into account any quarterbacks or receivers. I think that falls in line with where they've been in general. It's been in that just over 300, between 315 and 325, 30.
Yeah, 396 overall for everything over the last 5 years, 6 years, 5 years, 6 years. Sorry.
But I do have him scoring touchdowns. I got him at 10, a 10 and 2 receiving. He'll still be at the receiving back here, 56 targets. I think they'll want to reduce the amount of touches that he has because he's been banged up the last couple of years. So we have to see how he bounces back from those various injuries that he's accumulated over that time. But he should be a solid RB2 with RB1 upside if he can remain healthy.
So I went kind of the inverse of this. I do have him missing a game. I do have him running 15 times a game, though, seeing around 19 to 20 touches per. I have them. I've got them rushing 396 times, which is right kind of in line with where they've been percentage-wise based on the number of plays I expect them to run. That includes all positions because, I mean, they don't have a ton of wide receivers that are going to take rushing attempts. So I've got Devonta Freeman at 232 rush attempts over 15 games. Decent efficiency, just over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. That is an agreeable point for us, is that he is going to see a ton of touchdowns because that's what he does, is gets a ton of touchdowns. I got him at 54 targets, 42 receptions because he has been active in that area as well, 344 receiving yards. So I do see Devonta Freeman coming back and being kind of what he was, not last year, but 3 years ago-ish, before Tevin Coleman really took hold. And that's because Ito Smith still hasn't really taken hold, especially as a runner. The efficiency was not great. I do still expect Ito Smith to carry the ball 124 times. And that, again, is just because I've got the team running close to 400 times, which is it's actually still on the low side for an NFL club. But 124 rush attempts for him, 3.7 yards a carry, again, because he hasn't shown the efficiency as a runner yet, and I don't expect that to change when I look at the underlying numbers. 400, that is still a tick up, by the way, from last year. 459 rush yards, 4 touchdowns for him. I do have him being active in the passing game, though, which is where he did show value. 63 targets, 326 receiving yards, and a touchdown. So, unless Freeman's hurt, Ito Smith isn't really going to do much for you. I don't expect him to have the same value as Tevin Coleman, mostly because he's not that efficient of a runner yet. But Devonta Freeman, I think, is going to be kind of in that back end RB1 as far as upside goes. At worst case, a high running back 2, as long as he can stay healthy.
That's absolutely right for me too. I agree completely.
Like I said, just a tick over 1,000 yards for him. So I think he'll do well. Moving on to the wide receivers. So what do you expect out of Calvin Ridley in year 2? Do we expect Mohamed Sanu to take a step back? We already know Julio Jones is going to be in the 150-plus target range and, not score a ton of touchdowns, or at least not for the number of targets he gets. He'll still, put up between 6 and 8 like he normally does. But what are we expecting out of Calvin Ridley year 2?
I got him at over 100 targets. At 101, he will supplant Sanu, but Sanu will still be somewhat relevant because we got to see what really was after that 2-3 week blow up he had early on last year, and then really became more of a boom bust guy. Really, it's at 70 catches for me, just under 900 yards, 7 touchdowns, because that's one thing that he can do, or at least shown that he can do. Sanu at 87 targets, 62 receptions, 707 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He'll find some relevancy like he's been over the last couple of years, but more of that deeper roster, deeper league flex option during the bye weeks. It's mainly because I have Austin Hooper kind of taking another tick up and becoming the true third option in this target pecking order.
Yep. So Calvin Ridley, I was kind of wrong on, and Ben Morgan pointed it out to me. This was a good, again, loaded box. Go listen to that episode. This was a conversation we had on air that was before I projected these teams and really kind of swayed my initial thought on Calvin Ridley. He had a ton of touchdowns last season.
10.
Yep, 10. And I don't expect that to change. I do have him over 100 targets. I've got him at 108, just over 900 yards and 11 touchdowns this year, which touchdowns are fluky, but that would make him, again, just he had 92 targets last season, so I'm not projecting a huge increase. About 16 targets taken away from Mohamed Sanu, and 1 more touchdown in those 16 targets. That's pretty reasonable. So
no, that's true. It's just that he had, I think, 7 touchdowns in a 3-week span.
He did,
and that was during his blow up, and that's kind of where I was like, okay, it's hard to predict when guys will do that. So
touchdowns are hard to predict anyway.
Exactly.
So,
you're absolutely right.
I mean, that's why when I do my final rankings, I will fade guys that are point-driven by touchdown numbers, because that is the hardest stat to predict. It's a lot harder than yards and targets. So after I tier guys off, that'll go part of into how I organize those tiers is by those touchdown numbers, because if he only had 7 or 8, well, I'd believe that too, but that's only a 20-point swing. So,
Yeah.
I do suspect him, like you, to outdo Sanu, who I only have at 82 targets, 663 yards, 3 touchdowns, and not really being relevant, barring an injury. So Calvin Ridley, the other important thing for him, I do expect more consistency than what we saw last year. Last year was very touchdown driven, and most of his yardage and his production came in the first half of the season, not the second half. So I do expect him to be a bit more consistent this year.
Yep. He'll be a solid back and wide receiver 2, high 3, in what should be a very productive offense.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, and then Austin Hooper, he mostly broke out last year. Do you think he levels off, or do you think he's better this season?
So I got him at 92 targets, 76 receptions, 745 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I don't have his last year's numbers in front of me, but that'll put him
slightly
at a solid,
worse than that. Not a lot, but slightly worse than that. So you do have him taking a little bit of a step up.
A little bit of a step back, but this is because really in year 2, a healthy Freeman, but he should still be a solid tight end 1, high level streaming option. He'll be drafted, in that your top tier guys have gone. Let's take a guy with a lot of upside, and Hooper could still show a lot of that upside. He's still very young.
Yep, I agree with that completely. As for Austin Hooper, I'm right there with you. 91 targets, 730 yards, 5 touchdowns. So same ballpark.
Pretty much spot on.
Yep. First thing we've been spot on this show, really. So
yeah,
which is weird because we were spot on most of the last 2 episodes. So I'm glad we've got some dissension finally.
Sure.
But Austin Hooper, I do expect to have a solid tight end 1 finish again this year. He showed it last season, and Dirk Cutter has had some success using his tight ends, obviously. So that's the other reason I projected the slight increase for Austin Hooper. All right, let's go ahead and hit a one of those beer review thingies.
Yeah, sure.
Beer review.
All right, Dan, what did you think about Hop whatever from Sweetwater? Hop Ash
Sweetwater.
from Sweetwater.
It's just a really good, solid, easy drinking IPA. It's not super juicy, obviously. It's got a little bit of that on the front end, a little bit of the hop bitterness towards the back end. It's nothing going to be, outrageous because it only sits at 4.2% alcohol, but it's just an easy drinking, nice replacement beer than the first one I tried.
Yep. As for me, I was drinking Sakura Haze from Sudwork Brewing out of Davis, California. It's a hazy lager, and that's interesting because it is like a lager and a hazy hoppy lager, and it is like a lager and an IPA had a baby. It's very, very West Coast IPA like on the front end. It fades though and get a kind of that crisp finish that you'd expect from a lager. It's not the first one of these I had, but very, very good work from them. It's a very, very good beer. It's definitely an easy summer drinker, and it makes me excited to hopefully come across some more of their stuff here soon.
I'm excited to try them at some point.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can locate some and gift it.
Sure.
All right, let's go ahead and jump on to the Panthers are next in ABC order, and no surprise here. Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey, I've got them tagged as generally must-owns because they are year in and year out. First question, based on that, you should know my answer to this. I think you probably would agree with this, but Jordan Scarlett and Elijah Holyfield were drafted, which seems to suggest the Panthers went bigger between the tackles packs, but then Christian McCaffrey showed up just ripped. Do you think there's any threat to CMC here?
This is the first team I only projected 1 running back, and that's because I don't expect anyone to be a threat to CMC.
Yep, I also only projected CMC, so just for shits and grins, how do you have him?
All right, let's look here. 208 rushes, because I do expect that tick to somewhat come down. I think they'll try to lower his touches. 915 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground. 119 targets because you just can't go against what we've seen the last 2 years. He's just massively productive in this offense as a receiver. 98 receptions, 794 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So that is just just over 1,700 total yards and 12 total touchdowns. He'll be a solid top 5 RB. He's one of the safest. I'll try not to use that term too much, but with this pass catching upside and this offense kind of shifting gears, he's one of the sure bet fire options if he can stay healthy.
You said you had him at how many total yards? 1,700?
Yeah.
All right, I got him just a touch over 1,900.
Ooh,
I've got him
it.
at 221 rush attempts. It's about 13.8 per game. Similar efficiency to last year, coming out at just over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, 127 targets, which is about 3 more than last season. Just because, I mean, Devin Funchess went, and you didn't really replace him with anything. So I think a little bit more of that does go to CMC. So 127 targets, 108 receptions, 854 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think it's pretty in line with last season. Little bit of a bump up, but not a whole lot. It's kind of me expecting more of the same. So
yeah, it's going to be top 3 to 5 back. Again, at least he should be.
Absolutely. He's going to jump up into that tier. Spoilers, he's projected ahead of Le'Veon Bell for me.
Yeah, he's my RB3 right now with Zeke and
Barkley
projected. I think he's still below Kamara for me. But so I guess
him and Kamara are less than 3 points apart for me. And then I've got Zeke
close.
I got Zeke and Barkley ahead of that. Barkley is out front by a decent margin, though.
Yeah, he is killing it for me.
So, all right, that is not it for the Panthers, although I wish it was. DJ Moore and then who? And what do you expect from DJ Moore? And I guess the question here is twofold. What do you expect from DJ Moore, and who, if anybody, are you expecting to be relevant behind him, and where do you have interest in them if you do?
DJ Moore will be the wide receiver 1. I have him at 112 targets. That would have put him right on pace with what his second half pace would have been last year, had that been a 16-game season. 74 catches, just to take over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. We don't know what Cam's going to be as a passer with this shoulder. He should make a full recovery. I do expect him to be fine in that regard, but with Cam, there's always injury concerns, so I have to somewhat project into that with these targets here, and the fact that Cam doesn't throw the football a lot either. But the guy behind him should continue to be Curtis Samuel. As much as we want to go against him, as much as we don't like the fact that he's still a thing, he's been productive and a good dual threat option for this team. I got him at 72 targets, 43 catches, 500 yards, receiving 4 touchdowns, and added another rushing touchdown. He won't be a wide receiver 2. He'll flirt with that wide receiver 3 range and be a okay flex option, more of a best ball guy for me. And then Jarius Wright will be the 3rd. I don't think much of Chris Hogan or Torrey Smith.
All right. Offense. So we are about chalk on this. I've got DJ Moore at 114 targets, 71 receptions, 950 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's because I don't expect him to have to field stretch as much with Chris Hogan there and Torrey Smith there and Curtis Samuel there. I think he's going to work a bit more underneath like Devin Funchess kind of did. So I took a little bit off of his yards per reception, which is the difference in yardage there. I do have him at 5 touchdowns as well. So
yeah, he's just so good after the catch. I mean, he's like an Odell light.
I don't have him. I've still got him above 13 yards of reception, which is good.
Yeah,
so
I got him at 13.6.
13.4. So there's your difference.
That's fair.
As for Curtis Samuel, I do expect him to be the 2 as well, and this is where it gets creepy. 1 rush touchdown on 61 rushing yards, 73 targets, 42 receptions, 540 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So, again, not wide receiver 2, probably flirting with wide receiver 3, not going to be consistent week in and week out. You're going to have to pick and choose when to start him and when to think he's going to go off. So, good luck with that. I won't own him.
So, how many rushes did you project him?
6 at 10.2 yards and attempt.
Okay. I thought you said 61. I was like, what the fuck?
No, 61 yards.
It's like Tavon Austin style.
No, 61 yards.
Okay, that makes sense then.
And a touchdown.
Yeah.
Chris Hogan is the one I projected as the 3, albeit not at much. 65 targets, 39 receptions. A little bit more yardage than Curtis Samuel, not as many touchdowns, though, and that's just in receiving yards. Curtis Samuel jumps ahead of him by 40 to 50 yards based on rushing yardage. So I mean, Curtis Samuel's the one I want to own over Chris Hogan. I think Chris Hogan might have a good week or two. So late round best ball, I guess.
I always have Curtis Samuel as a good best ball. I put Jerry's right there because he fits the slot that they don't have.
He does. I think DJ Moore
It could
can move
be
around. Curtis
maybe more, but I expect Moore and Samuel to be the outside receivers.
I think they probably move these guys around a ton, honestly.
That I completely agree with.
And Greg Olsen is back from a foot injury. Does he have any gas left in the tank? What do you project from him? And does Ian Thomas have a role if they try to protect Olsen?
As much as I want Ian Thomas to be a thing this year, unless Greg Olsen gets hurt, which could very well happen, I do have Greg Olsen as the true one. I got him at 84 targets, 52 receptions, just shy of 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. The reason being is I think the Panthers will continue to try to push for a playoff run. This is still a good offense. This can be a very good defense when they're healthy. And I think that's why they brought Greg Olsen back, because they want to try to compete. Thomas will still be a thing. He has a lot of upside and potential if Olsen does get hurt. I got him at 42 targets, 31 catches, and 2 touchdowns. He won't be much of a thing unless Greg Olsen gets injured.
So I think overall I projected him to use the tight ends a little more than you do. It shows up more with Thomas than Olsen, and that's because I feel like the 2 tight ends are probably their second and third best receiving options on this team.
That's very true.
As far as pure wide receivers go, I mean, Curtis Samuel has his gadget upside. I got Greg Olsen at 86 targets, 57 receptions, 640 yards, 6 touchdowns. So well off of where he was in his prime, but definitely still relevant as long as he can stay healthy, which I did project him to do so.
Same here.
As for Ian Thomas, 53 targets. So, again, kind of the same ballpark, 38 receptions, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns because he was very, very efficient. He's coming off of his own injuries. So, it'll be interesting to see really through training camp how healthy these guys are and adjust it as it goes. Generally speaking, though, I do expect the tight ends to be involved. I expect some 2 tight end sets. I expect them both to be used because they didn't replace Devin Funchess. Chris Hogan is a deep threat. Curtis Samuel is more of a deep threat gadget player, and Torrey Smith is a deep threat. So they're going to need more than just DJ Moore to work some of those intermediate routes underneath, and I think that the 2 tight ends are going to do that. And I think they try to protect Olsen by not having him take all of that work.
That's very fair.
All right. And last but certainly not least, the New Orleans Saints. I've got Mustones as Kamara and Michael Thomas. I think that goes without saying. Let's start off with Drew Brees. And this just kind of goes to Drew Brees is not the he's not the 650 yards, draft him in the 5th or 6th round quarterback anymore that you've come accustomed to. He's passed less and less over the last several years. It's kind of capped his fantasy value. His bit was just, I think, 519 attempts last year, 535 the year before. It's not very below 550, so not very good. How do you see Drew Brees this season?
I got him at 529 attempts, so kind of right in that pace as we saw last year. He'd only play 15 games. That's why it's shy. That's why he's under 500 attempts. Yep. So I do expect much of the same. This is a very good offense, but this is also a very good defense and a team that is not afraid to run the football and just let Drew Brees micromanage the clock and let Kamara do his thing. So I got him at 529 attempts, 4,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, 9 picks, and then 2 rushing touchdowns because it's Drew Brees and he finds the way to get into the end zone any way he possibly can.
Yep.
That's just right in line with what his career touchdown percentages, interception percentage has been. I completely agree with you on the attempts, saying he's not the top 5 QB as we've seen because he's become more of a game manager with very good upside. If this defense does take a step back, as we saw last year in the first 4 or 5 weeks, Brees is completely a top 5 quarterback, but I do expect this defense to be very good.
As for Drew Brees, I've got him at about 550 attempts. I do expect a little bit of an uptick. Again, that's because I expect the Bucs to be better. They do not have an easy schedule, so they are going to have to throw maybe just a tick more. Also, Mark Ingram not being there. I like Latavius Murray. I don't think he's quite as good as Mark Ingram is, so I think that puts a little bit more back in Bree's hands. But again, not too far off of you. Just a slight uptick from last season. I do still expect him to be hyper efficient and very, very good with his interception rate, though. That's going to give him 32 touchdowns and 7 picks, just a hair over 4,400 yards. That does make him kind of in streamer range for me by the time it's all said and done, I think. Just because it's Drew Brees, there's not going to be a ton of rushing upside to him or a ton of extra to bolster that. So I do not think, again, I don't think we ever see Drew Brees in the remainder of his career throw 650 times.
Unless something happens to that defense, no.
Yeah, and that if something happens to that defense, it would be a surprise rather than anything that's necessarily predictable. I've got Drew Brees right now sandwiched between Matt Ryan and Tom Brady.
I got him between Tom Brady and Josh Allen.
So there you go.
That's my QB9.
Yep, he's my QB10 currently. And that, again, that's just based on points. That's before anything else is adjusted. But yeah, he's a late round quarterback these days. He's a guy that you take round, towards the end of your draft and, know that there's still upside there. But when you're banking on efficiency like that, it's just not always a guarantee for him.
Yeah, and there's no way, he's a guy that could end up throwing 20 times a game, and that's not going to get it done.
Yep. All right, Mark Ingram is out. Latavius Murray's in. How does this impact Kamara, and what do you expect from Latavius Murray in this offense?
I do expect Murray to kind of fill in that Mark Ingram role, not to that extent, but Kamara's always been a guy who's been able to bank on his massive efficiency in doing it with not getting a whole lot of rushes. I actually have that projected to be the case. I have 198 rushes for Kamara and 183 for Murray. This offense is massively efficient in the red zone, both scoring 12 touchdowns for Kamara, 8 for Murray. I got them both not reaching 1,000 yards rushing, but both going to be very good in their own regard. 970 for Kamara, 824 for Murray. It's the passing game again, though. It's what sets them apart, at least at least for Kamara. I don't see him getting 100 targets. I got him at 90 because of what we've seen with him when there's been a healthy, good RB2. We saw that with Mark Ingram. Is on pace when Ingram's been healthy. It's been less than 100. It's been less than 100 targets, so that I do expect that to be the case with Murray. He may not be the same back as Ingram, but he's brought in to be that 85% of what we've got from Mark Ingram, which is enough to take away some of that pass catching efficiency. But Kamara is still a beast in his own regard. 71 receptions, 675 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's 1645 total yards and 16 total touchdowns. And Latavius Murray, in his own right, 1,100 total yards and 8 touchdowns. So Murray to me will be a back into high 3 great flex option.
So I don't see nearly as much in the passing game from Latavius Murray as you do, which is going to shift this a little bit. And that's just because that's not really been his forte, because even though he has the ability, it's kind of like Jordan Howard. Even though he has the ability to catch the ball, he's not super efficient when he does it. So I do think that the departure of Mark Ingram, I don't think it's a one-for-one replacement. I think the departure of Mark Ingram, you do see Latavius Murray fit that kind of big back role that Mark Ingram was playing, because that's what he has been really good at through his career. He's been very efficient at that. But I do see some of that, more of that those targets staying in Alvin Kamara's court, just because he's way more efficient at it than what Murray is. And they also are going to need to find targets to go someplace because of the wide receiver situation we talked about in the intro. Because of that, I've got Kamara rushing 222 times. I've got him just over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns because he's been super efficient at that as well. And that's how the Saints have scored touchdowns, is through their running game more often than not the last 2 seasons. 108 targets, and then everything else is proportional. 5 touchdowns instead of 4, 726 receiving yards instead of 675. So literally is just the difference that I see the target volume. As for Latavius Murray, I don't quite see the 1,100 yards. I've got him at just under 1,000, 997, I think is actually where he's at. 176 rush attempts. So again, it's 11 a game. I do still see the way that I've got that split is about 14 a game for Kamara, 11 a game on average for Latavius Murray. That's fair, in my opinion.
That's very fair.
757 yards for him, 7 touchdowns on the ground, which makes him very, very ownable, especially as a flex option.
Definitely.
But I do have him at just 25 targets, 21 receptions, 140 receiving yards. So that passing work for Latavius Murray, I think, is where we see the big difference, and that's just because if he's not efficient at it, I don't expect him to try to force it there. I see
Yeah,
more
I
of
mean,
a
yeah,
Deuce McAllister or Pierre Thomas split.
that's very, very fair.
All right. And as for the wide receivers, do we see anybody jumping up to take that number 2 behind Michael Thomas and being relevant? I think we want it to be Traquan Smith, but he did not have a great season last year. Didn't flash a whole lot, even though the opportunity was there. Ted Ginn's going to be back from injury, but he is getting older, to say the least. So what do you see out of the other wide receivers?
It's not pretty. It's always Michael Thomas. I got him at 151 targets, 9 touchdowns, 1,400 yards. That's what he does. That's his role. He is the dominator, the 28% target share. I do have Traquan Smith taking that wide receiver 2 spot. 79 targets, 54 catches, 745 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I still see him as as a somewhat big play threat. It just depends on what Ted Ginn can do in terms of staying healthy or not. In the fact that, can he, take the next step and that fit into this non-existence, which we saw in games last year. I just don't see a true number 2, as we've talked about earlier. I just don't see a true number 2, but I do expect Smith to be at least the next guy in terms of stats wise to be the next guy behind Thomas.
So I got it the other way around. I got about one more year before Traquan Smith really steps into that role. I do have him taking a step up from last season, which is not hard to do. I think he only had like 38 targets and not a ton of yardage, but had like 4 touchdowns somehow. I got 55 targets for him, 462 yards, 6 touchdowns. And again, I think the development curve is just more for Traquan Smith than we initially thought. I still think he'll be that. I don't think it's going to be year 2, though. I think he's more of a year 3 breakout. As for Ted Ginn, I have him coming back, but where Traquan Smith got those targets is from Ted Ginn. So I don't have Ted Ginn necessarily being ownable either. Just 71 targets for him, 40 receptions, 542 yards, 2 touchdowns. So really, you're right. It's ugly. I don't want to own either of them. It's Michael Thomas or bust, who I have right there with you, just a tick under 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns, 150 targets. So
you're pretty much spot on with Thomas.
Yeah, it's Michael Thomas or bust for me.
Yep.
The more intriguing secondary option here is the new addition of Jared Cook. He's found a home that's been traditionally tight end friendly. I do think he is actually the second best receiver or third best receiver on this team if you count Kamara.
We're gonna be pretty different in this.
Okay.
So I went back and I looked at to see what this tight end friendly offense has produced. It hasn't really been that great. I mean, when you look at besides Ben Watson, during his breakout year when he was the true number 2 behind Brandon Cooks, it's been kind of ugly. Coby Fleener had 81 and his career high with the Saints. Massively disappointed. They brought him back again, disappointed. Josh Hill is just a blocker. Dan Arnold was a thing for a game and a half. But that's been over 4 years, I think, at this point. And this team has shifted, in its offense philosophy, and that's running the ball more, being more balanced. Kamara has been a massive shift in how this team has operated. So for me, Cook, I am at 58 targets, 40 catches, just over 500 yards and 3 touchdowns. The tight ends really haven't done much during this Kamara span. Even pre-Kamara, when Mark Ingram was still the top guy in this offense as the at least as the running back. I just don't see a lot from him. I expect to be wrong at some point with this. But what we've seen from Jared Cook pre-Oakland has been just massive disappointment. And I don't think the Saints offense is as friendly as people think, at least for tight ends.
So I'm going to go ahead and check that and go the other way, obviously. And that's, you mentioned Coby Fleener. 81 targets is good target volume for a tight end. That's really good target volume for a tight end, but he wasn't efficient with them. And by all accounts, he never really grasped the offense. If you're going to tell me that Jared Cook is the same level as Dan Arnold and Josh Hill, I'm going to tell you you're full of shit.
No.
And you look at what Jimmy Graham did. Jimmy Graham was excellent, but he was consistently 120, 150 targets with running backs getting targets, but that's when Drew Brees was throwing 670 times. So how do you fit the middle there? this offense is averaging about 126 tight end targets, so I did not go up to that level. Said 98 targets, and you look at what's behind Jared Cook, not a whole lot. I've got Jared Cook at 90 targets, which is about where he was last year with Oakland. And again, that's because I don't expect a whole lot out of the other receivers. I do expect some of Mark Ingram's target volume to be freed up because I don't have all of that going to Latavius Murray, which is probably the biggest difference here.
No, it is.
I've got Jared Cook at 90 targets, 61 receptions, 791 yards, and 7 touchdowns, which does make him a very, very ownable tight end 1. And again, I do think he's definitely the most athletic tight end that they've had since Jimmy Graham was there. But he showed in Oakland last year that if you give him the volume, he can actually do it. We've always had the hunch that Jared Cook was going to be able to do that, and he never had. But he didn't get the volume. Look at what he was playing with in, St. Louis, or when they went to L.A. Green Bay. They've not. I mean, what's the last relevant tight end they produced was Jermichael Finley. That is not a tight end friendly offense, and we've watched Jimmy Graham, even though he's older, flounder there. So to me, when I take more into account with what the Saints had personnel wise and where Jared Cook has been, I think it's a little bit closer than, what Coby Fleener was. I kind of used that Coby Fleener season as framework, if you will, but obviously accounted for efficiency differences between Jared Cook and Coby Fleener because I think Jared Cook is more efficient. So,
yeah, like for me, it's been tough because Cook was the only option last year. They traded Cooper very, very early on in the season, and then he became a little bit more consistent with his work. He now goes to a team like with the Saints with Thomas and Kamara as the true 1 and 2. There really hasn't been a third option on this team the last couple of years, and just with the downtick in passing and more the uptick in rushing, and then obviously with the good enough defense, they don't need to throw a bunch in general. It's hard for me because I loved this move when it happened. I took Cook in a lot of best ball drafts. I took Cook in a lot of mock drafts, but when I sat down and dug deep into this, it hasn't been tight end friendly. Now, granted, Cook is a far better option than Dan Arnold, far better option than old ass Ben Watson, and a far better option than Josh Hill.
Who broke out, old ass Ben Watson. So again, just like I said, looking back at the last 6 seasons, which includes Ben Watson, it includes Josh Hill, it includes Coby Fleener, it includes, I think, the last 2 years of Jimmy Graham. I mean, you're looking at 126 targets per. Even if you fade that with nobody else behind him, and you fade it for the offensive change, I mean, that's still decent volume.
That's still a like for me, it's just a massive change from that. During Ben Watson's breakout year, Drew Brees threw the ball 679 times. I mean, that's 4 guys at over 100 targets. And then you saw that,
and that's it because they had Willie Snead there, and they had who was the other one? They had 3 wide receivers that were up there in target volume, and that is not
Cooks and Thomas.
Yeah, and that is not going to happen this year. You're not going to have 3 wide receivers over 100 targets, and that's where the fall off in passing comes from for me.
Yeah, I mean, like, we can keep splitting hairs in this. It's basically where we see the targets going now that Mark Ingram's gone, and who's the number 2. I mean, I will not be surprised if I'm wrong on Cook. I'm not high on him. I want it to be. This is where my biggest difference has changed, is that I don't see the massive upside, but I will not be surprised if it shows up. Like I do expect to be wrong in some regard on this.
Yeah, so I do see the massive upside, and again, the difference is where we see the targets going. I think that's basically what it is. You see it going to Latavius Murray. I see it going to Jared Cook because everything else is pretty equal there. So
yeah,
and
I also expect Smith to take a
bigger jump than I do.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So one of us will be right, one of us will be wrong, or he'll get hurt and it won't matter.
It'll be somewhere in between, probably.
Probably somewhere in between. He's probably, you've got him at 58, I've got him at 90. He's probably going to land in the 70 range.
He'll be a streamer.
Yeah.
Well.
All right. Kind of similar predictions on this division. Actually, they're pretty much chalk, yeah. I will say this. I actually had the Panthers predicted at 5-11, and then I adjusted it for this episode because they could be anywhere between 5-11 and probably 9-7. So I split the middle when I put it out there because me and the Panthers,
Yeah, I know.
But We will see the Saints winning this division at 11-5. The Falcons in second at 10-6. You got the Bucks at 7-9. I've got them at 8-8. That defense is just not good enough to support that offense yet.
Yep.
And we both have the Panthers at 7-9, basically because they're void of offensive talent, not named DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey, and the defense is still in need of work also. I mean, they don't do a great job of holding or surrounding Cam with people that can produce necessarily.
It just depends on Cam Newton, because this has been a team that has been on and off. This has been a playoff team, then a bad team, a playoff team, then a bad team.
Yeah.
And we both predict them to end that and be back-to-back mediocre.
Yeah.
It's all, like, for me, it's all based on this. It's just all based on Cam Newton.
Absolutely. All right, that's all we got for you on this episode. We will be back next week with the AFC North, I believe.
Yes.
So be sure to check that out as we talk about everyone's favorite offseason story, the Browns, everyone's favorite dumpster fire, the Ravens, try to figure out what the Steelers do as they transition from the era of Antonio Brown and Lev Bell to James Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster, and the Bengals are there too. So be sure to tune in for that. As a reminder, if you want to see me go through a table, you want to help kids with cancer, we are partnering with Wrestling for a Cure to do a drive. If we hit $500 in donation, I will be put through a table. You can donate to that at gofundme.com/hopper-goes-through-a-table-for-St-Jude, or go to GoFundMe.com and search that, or just find the link on Twitter or in the comments of this video. We will be attending the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo in August. If you want to go hang out with us, visit the Football Hall of Fame, use promo code BEER at MidwestFFExpo.com to get $5 off your ticket. We'll have some cool stuff going on that we'll be announcing in the few weeks after we have a chance to talk about that. One more time, Dan, where can people find you?
At 30BFF with 2 Fs.
You can find me at HotBFF with 2 Ps on Twitter. You can find the show at BeerfieldFF, Twitter, Instagram, Untapped, Beerfield Fantasy Football on YouTube and Facebook. You can also find me on this week's release of the Loaded Box podcast, talking second-year wide receivers and quarterbacks. I definitely encourage you to go listen to that. It's a great conversation, great back and forth, and the contrast between me being statistical-based and DJ just shooting from the hip is really, really good. So, also, Ben is pregnant, so stop by and tell him congratulations. We are Beerfield Fantasy Football, and we will catch you guys. Wait for it. I got to get the drop ready. Hold on.
Pause for effect.
Pause for effect. Next time.
Peace.
See ya.
Beer.